Hello everyone, welcome back. I literally just got done with MrBallen's Historical Legends Part 4. That video will, I don't know when this will go up, but obviously that one will go up first. And it was infuriating. I had to stop, I wanted to go smoke a cigarette and I don't even smoke. That's how angry I was. So we're going to watch Historical Legends Part 5 and The Stray Cat King. I don't know what that means. But anyways, this is a 15-minute video, and I'll somehow probably make it 20 minutes. So I don't want to talk too long. If you like this type of stuff, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you like what I bring to you, if you like the little interactions. If not, then don't. But, you know, it's not going to stop me. I'll keep going. Anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and get on to this, and let's enjoy The Stray Cat King.
No matter how absurd this story gets, remember, it's true. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel, because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please sneak into the like button's house and lightly toast all of their bread and then put it back in the bag. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss our weekly uploads. Alright, let's get into today's story.
Timothy Dexter.
In the winter of 1748,
Dexter.
Timothy Dexter was born in a town just north of Boston, Massachusetts called Malden. Despite being incredibly dim-witted, Timothy always believed he was going to strike it rich one day. But looking around at his family, who were a bunch of poor farm laborers, Timothy realized he would need to make some big moves if he wanted that dream to become a reality. When he was just 8 years old, he decided he would make the first of his many big moves. And this move was to drop out of 2nd grade and go to work on a farm and then on to a leather tannery. For years, he worked hard, earning more money than his family had ever made, but he knew this line of work was not going to make him rich. And so when he was 19 years old, he decided it was time to make yet another big move. He sold his best suit and used the money to relocate farther north to another Massachusetts town called Newburyport. He believed with their booming economy, he was bound to make some additional money there. And he was right, but his payday would not come from a higher paying job. When he arrived there, he met a lonely, wealthy widow named Elizabeth Frothingham, and he promptly married her, becoming rich overnight. After moving into her mansion,
I'll say this, he has drive. Drive helps you get places. You know, marrying rich does help too, especially when you're marrying to the Frothinghams. We all know that.
and dubbing himself Lord Timothy Dexter, he suddenly felt lost.
All right.
He had spent his entire life pursuing wealth, and now that he suddenly had it, he didn't know what to do with it. And so he looked around Newburyport at the other rich people and saw what they were doing, and he found that many of them held political positions. And so Timothy decided he would run for office too. But unfortunately, the voters caught on to the fact that he was a 2nd grade dropout who couldn't read or write or think critically, so he didn't win the election. But instead of accepting his defeat, Timothy began petitioning the town to let him have his political office anyways. And the town said, no, that's not how democracy works. But Timothy didn't really understand, and he just continued to send these carefully outlined petitions explaining exactly why they needed to appoint him. The town had to bring in experts that were able to decipher what he wrote, because Timothy was deeply illiterate, and his petitions were so riddled with spelling mistakes and were so confusing that at first glance it looked like it was written in a foreign language. After they deciphered them, they would immediately deny them, but Timothy just continued to send them. And so finally the town got so fed up with all of his petitions that they decided they would just give him a fake political title just to get him to stop and to low-key humiliate him. They offered him the title of the Informer of
If he doesn't have the knowledge, you know, he's illiterate and all this stuff, you're not hurting someone. Like you might, like his wife and all the other people, they might look at it like you're being insulted. But he looks at it like, nah, I got what I wanted. I didn't get this, but they gave me that. That's all he's thinking. And he's going to try to use that to springboard to something else. He's not worried about any of the other stuff, any of the other insults. He's just probably looking at his paying his dues. even though he's rich. Maybe, I don't know.
And they told him his job was to look high and low all over Newburyport for any signs of deer activity. And the joke was, in Newburyport, there are no deer. But Timothy did not find this humiliating. He did not see the joke in it. He took it very seriously and believed his petitions had worked. And so he took his political title and with great enthusiasm, he got to work, spending all hours running all around the town, carefully documenting all deer activity, of which there was none. At the end of his term, Timothy felt like
Did he even know what a deer was or what it looked like?
he had accomplished a lot as the informer.
He's probably looking at squirrels and rabbits, and he's like, look at that. That's got to be a deer. I've never seen him be able to climb trees before.
Of deer and was ready to move on from political office.
There's a flying one over there.
And so he turned in his official Informer of Deer logbook to the town and told them they should pass it along to the next Informer of Deer to get them up to speed. Unfortunately, when the town opened that logbook, they found it contained only crude pictures of deer and then illiterate ramblings about deer that were so difficult to decipher that even the experts weren't able to do it. And so the logbook was thrown away, and the Informer of Deer position was never filled again. Shortly after the American Revolutionary War broke out between the colonies in America and Great Britain, America began printing their own money to pay for their troops. But this money, called the Continental Dollar, it wasn't backed by silver or gold. It was just backed on the promise of future value if America won the war. That, combined with overprinting this money, led to rampant inflation, and very quickly the Continental Dollar was worthless. Some of the wealthy folk in Newburyport decided they would do the troops a favor, who were now destitute because they held all of this worthless currency. And these wealthy people offered to buy all of their Continental currency for a fraction of the price, which was better than nothing. When Timothy saw all these rich people doing that, he quickly jumped on the trend. But he didn't view this as doing a favor for these troops that needed the money. He viewed this as a great investment opportunity. He believed America was going to win this war and that eventually this currency was going to have lots of value. And so he invested all of his savings into buying back the Continental Dollar. When word spread that Timothy had made this terrible investment, because at the time, nobody was predicting this currency would have
all the money, that was all the Frothingham's money, right? All her money? Well, I guess it would be his money. Back in those days, you don't know how it was, but I mean, still. Honey, I used all your money to buy terrible currency.
have any worth, really, even if America won the war. When they found out that Timothy had made this ridiculous investment, his peers, the other wealthy folk in Newburyport, they were thrilled. They were so annoyed by Timothy, and they didn't like the fact that he was kind of on their level because he had some money, and so they were excited to see him go bankrupt. But sure enough, at the end of the American Revolution, when America won the war, Congress made good and backed the currency, making Timothy one of the richest people in America overnight. Right away, Timothy used his second big windfall of cash to purchase the most luxurious mansion in the richest neighborhood in all of Newburyport.
Good
but
for
beyond
you, man.
that purchase, he didn't really know what to do with all of this money. It was very overwhelming. And so after several weeks of deep introspection where he tried to figure out, who he was now and what he wanted to be, it suddenly became clear to him. He needed to construct 40 wooden statues of random famous men on his front lawn. These statues
Okay.
Statues included George Washington, Napoleon Bonaparte, Thomas Jefferson, and of course himself. The inscription under his statue read, "The first in the East, the first in the West, and the greatest philosopher in the Western world." After a sculptor was done, Timothy went out.
He sounds like a very humble man.
To inspect all 40 statues, and he discovered what he believed to be a huge discrepancy on one of them. Underneath Thomas Jefferson's replica, it said the author of the Declaration of Independence, which is accurate. But he told his sculptor that he was supposed to put down the author of the Constitution. And the sculptor very gently said, "That's not right. It should be the Declaration of Independence." Timothy became irate. He was not having it, and so he ran into his mansion and came out with his oversized hunting rifle and began firing at the sculptor's feet until he made the change. After Jefferson's title was fixed, Timothy noticed another discrepancy on another statue. He walked over to the George Washington replica and looked underneath it at the inscription, which said George Washington. And Timothy just shook his head, got out a paintbrush, covered it up, and wrote one word: Pitt. Just Pitt. Because periodically Timothy would confuse George Washington's name with Pitt, and nobody could convince him otherwise. By now,
Who's Pitt? There was a Pitcairn. Who's Pitt? I'm gonna look it up later.
The other wealthy folk in Newburyport had really grown to resent Timothy, and now he was just showing off his wealth with his totally ridiculous mansion and all of his statues, and so some of these aristocrats wanted to find a way to just ruin Timothy. And so, knowing he was not a very bright man, they decided they would start giving him deliberately terrible investment tips. The first being that he should buy a whole bunch of warming pans and send them to the Caribbean. A warming pan is like this big frying pan that you load up with hot coals and you slide under your bed to stay warm at night. This works really well in a cold environment like Newburyport, but is completely worthless in a warm tropical environment like the Caribbean. But Timothy believed he was being given some great insider trading information and absolutely took this to the bank.
How does this work?
He went and bought 2 ships and he loaded them up with 40,000 of these huge warming pans and he fired them off to the Caribbean. And when they got there, the locals didn't know what they were or what they were for, but they found these warming pans served as great ladles for molasses, and they all sold out for a huge profit. And so Timothy went to those aristocrats and he thanked them for their incredible investment tip. These rich people were furious that their plan had backfired, and so they decided they would pitch him another, even worse investment tip that was bound to ruin him. They told him, why don't you buy up a whole bunch of coal and send it to Newcastle, England? Newcastle being the coal capital of the world, where there was so much coal there was actually an expression at the time, that's like sending coal to Newcastle, which meant you're doing something completely pointless. But these fine rich folks had never done Timothy wrong, and so he took their advice and
how does this
took
work?
It to the bank. He loaded up his ships with coal and he sent them off to Newcastle. And this would have ruined him had it not been for the coal workers' strike that occurred right before his shipment arrived. And so when Timothy's coal arrived on the shores of Newcastle, there was a coal shortage, and all of his coal sold out for another huge profit.
Of course it did.
So once again, Timothy went back to the aristocrats and said, thank you for the incredible advice. Now truly irate that their plan has backfired 2 times, these aristocrats got together and said, okay, we got to set him up for something that's going to make him fail. And so they pitched him one more terrible investment tip. This was, hey Timothy, why don't you go buy all the whalebone you possibly can? Just hoard it, keep it in your house, because someday it's going to get really valuable. At the time, whalebone was extremely expensive and losing its value every single day. But again, Timothy thinks these people have never done me wrong. I'm going to do just that. And so he went out and he collected thousands of pounds of these rotting whale bones and made a huge stockpile in his basement. And shortly after he had built up this mountain of bone, over in France, it became fashionable for men to wear corsets. And wouldn't you know it, these corsets were made out of whalebone. And so once...
This is fantastic. How mad do you think you would be if you kept giving terrible information to somebody, advice, I guess, and it works out for them, and all the money they're making? You would be so mad. Oh, they were hot under the collar, I bet. Oh.
Again, Timothy's investment completely paid off, and so he tipped his hat for a 3rd time to these rich folks that just keep making him more and more money. After these 3 big investment wins, Timothy was very confident and he viewed himself as a shrewd investor, and so he began to believe that he could identify winning investments himself. And so the first winning investment that he identified was to purchase all these stray cats in Newburyport that were lined up for euthanization. Timothy figured these mangy, sick, feral animals would make great house pets in the Caribbean. And so he loaded them all onto his 2 ships, he fired them across the sea, and wouldn't you know it, they sold like hotcakes. Not because they were cute and cuddly, but because, unbeknownst to Timothy, the Caribbean had a huge rat infestation problem in their warehouses, and so his shipment of stray cats arrived at the perfect time. At some point, after all these successful investments, Timothy started to wonder about his legacy. How would people remember him after he was gone? And so there was only one
As the greatest entrepreneur in the world.
way to find out. Timothy very elaborately faked his own death. And as he hid, watching his funeral, he noticed his wife, Elizabeth, wasn't as sad as he thought she should be over the death of her husband. And so he leapt out in front of the thousands of people that were there, and he began beating his wife with his cane. After this, Timothy decided he didn't really like his wife anymore, and so he decided he would just tell people she was dead, even though she was not dead. And so when people came to Timothy's mansion and they saw his wife walking around, clearly alive, Timothy would tell them, "Oh, she's a ghost." And because at this point...
She's a ghost. Oh, I love this guy. I love him. I'm voting him for president
Timothy
in 2024.
was so wealthy and so influential, people just kind of accepted this and began viewing Elizabeth as a ghost. Before Timothy's actual death, he penned an autobiography called A Pickle for the Knowing Ones, a title that to this day people still don't really understand. Inside the book were 24 pages of completely illiterate ramblings with absolutely zero punctuation. The book was so terrible that it actually sold out very quickly because people thought it was funny to buy this book. After people criticized Timothy for not using any punctuation, Timothy printed a second edition where at the very end he included a single page with 13 lines of just random punctuation marks with a note at the bottom that said, "Go ahead and sprinkle these in as you see fit." In 1806, just a few years after publishing his book,
Oh, I love this guy. Oh my goodness, I want to name my children after him. Oh, this is the greatest person ever. Oh my goodness, I love this. Oh, I gotta take a break. Wow. This is amazing. Yes, I see you. Hello. Okay, back at. I want to rewatch
Dexter,
this one
the
again.
Former of Deer quietly passed away. This time for real. So
rest
that's going
in
to do
peace,
it, guys. If you found the secret in today's video, let us know in the comments.
The secret was you just did a video on the greatest human being in the history of the world. I love this man. When I grow up, I want to be him. I want to be this guy. Oh, I needed this. Because I just did the historical legends part 4, and I got mad. I was angry. My dogs didn't even want to be near me. They just figured it was on them. This one is... I want to watch this again and record it, and then upload both recordings on the same day. That's how much I love this video. Oh, Mr. B. What a gem this one was. Oh. I'm going to end this here. This is a good day. Well, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you like this kind of thing. I do a bunch of different things. I did a try not to laugh, but I haven't done one since. Because most of them... I did Idiot Drivers, which I kind of liked, but I really like MrBallen. Obviously, I think a lot of people do. I still do the unknown mysteries and stuff like that. My editing software sucks, so I have to do the way that I do it, but it's not how I want to do it. None of that matters on this video. I'm going to go ahead and end it here, but this one was a gem. I hope you enjoyed it because, as you can tell, I certainly did. All right? Have a good day.